It's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I
Thanks
appreciate
for having me today too. I appreciate it. Yeah.
it. You bet. So before we get into your good work, I want to know this. 6 years ago, this pandemic was changing our world, changing our
Yeah.
lives. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you work and live today?
Well, it really sort of shaped my perspective on how to approach my work. So there's a couple of dimensions to that. First of all, our approach was to um, really sort of hunker down and try to avoid any risk as possible. Try to avoid as much risk as possible as far as contacting the disease. And so that was kind of an agreement that my wife and I made. So it really sort of put us in a position to where we had to figure out how to work from home, and I think that a lot of people had to do that as well. And so, um, and kind of going back to my like perspective on how work has changed since then, I think that it really sort of opened up this era of people realizing that. Um, something, we fell into the great resignation of people just, not being happy with the relationship that they had with their employers. And so we had this max exodus that happened as a result of it. And I think all of that was kind of a sort of an awakening that happened where, people can, survive and be very, very productive working from home. And so so I think what eventually happened is that corporations catered to that almost because they were forced to. But then, as we started exiting COVID, then there was a difference in philosophy on where we should go. And so we started introducing hybrid work. I just think that, it created the environment where we got employers and employees, like I said, philosophically on the wrong page as we exited it.
So let's get into the good work that you're doing right now. Let's dig in. I'm going to put you in front of 13-year-olds at Career Day, and one of the kids wants to know what you do for a living. How do you synthesize your day job to make sense to their brains?
Wow, yeah. So I think that there are a lot of people who are responsible for leading and managing whatever is going on with whatever sort of responsibilities that they have. For instance, like when you go to school, you have a teacher that's leading through the program, kind of leading you through the education. So what I do is I help those leaders and managers whenever they get stuck with an issue that they don't really know how to resolve. Now, I do that for leaders that are in very, very big organizations, and so they're dealing with, very complicated problems. But at the end of the day, they're trying to accomplish something that maybe they haven't accomplished, they haven't attempted before, or they're dealing with a people situation that they haven't really dealt with before. And so that's what I do. I come in and I help leaders improve organizational performance. Those are a lot of big words, but it helps them do what they need to do.
I get it. So, what did you want to be at that age? When you were 12 or 13, what was your dream gig?
Oh wow. That's a great question. I think when I was 12 or 13 years old, I was convinced I was going to be a computer programmer.
Okay.
That was let's see, I'm trying to think about that's probably like late 70s, early 80s for me. So computers were just coming up on the scene. I cut my teeth out here in Silicon Valley, and so I kind of saw the rise of Silicon Valley and the great companies. And even when even back then when computers weren't um, um, as popular as they are today, or important to people's lives, I always had an inclination for computers. I always thought that they were interesting, and at that age I think I wanted to be a computer programmer for sure.
So, talk to me a little bit about your roots and the seeds that were planted that have become you as an author, as someone that helps organizations, your business acumen. How did all of this take root and evolve into who you are today?
It's kind of a funny journey, because I never really intended to do it that way. I mean, like you said, when I was 12 or 13 years old, I didn't say to myself, oh, one day I'm going to be a management consultant, right? That so, what I tell people is that consulting actually found me. I didn't go out looking for doing it. I kind of, like I said, I started down a very heavy programming track. Started out getting my degree in computer science, and started working heavily with um, databases specifically, just on the storage side of things, business intelligence, data warehousing, this kind of thing. And it started getting really frustrating for me because we would, whenever you enter a project like that, I was a techie. I was a techie through and through. I still am. I just don't tell too many people that. But you can take the boy out of Silicon Valley, but you can't take Silicon Valley out of the boy, right?
Right.
So, we would get into these projects and Joe, and we would have a project manager there, and invariably they would sign us up for something impossible. And we would argue about it, but I come from a culture that's very sort of committed to winning, right? And so we would band together, we would knock the deliverable out, and we would deliver on what we needed to deliver on. But then you would think that lessons learned, that project manager would go back and say, all right, well, based on kind of what my team had to go through, we're going to make some adjustments. No, they never did that, right? They always just turned back around and signed us up for another impossible deliverable, right? So after some time, I said, well, you know what? I want to be the project manager though. I don't want to, number one, I don't want to go through this with other project managers. And number two, I don't want to put other people through that. And so I really want to learn about project management and then so I did. I studied Six Sigma, and I studied eventually Agile when Agile hit the scene, and just learned everything about like how to execute, what I call execution excellence. And then that sort of, and the Six Sigma journey kind of led me to process management and process improvement. And then that combination sort of led me to leadership and leadership development, and working with higher levels of the organization in order to accomplish what they need. And so that brought me into strategy and org design and innovation. And yeah, it's kind of a combination of just kind of going with the flow with where my life took me, with where always following where the need is, where people need help. I like to provide help. But I guess, there was a little bit of intention there too, just looking at opportunities around me and saying, hey, I think that, there's an opportunity to improve over here, especially when it came to like change management, because what happened is you get sort of the project management and the process management side of things, but if you don't address the people side always kind of gets you messed up. And so that got me heavy into organizational change management. And
Who's
eventually it all kind of comes together. Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly does, one way or another. So who's been kind of your inspiration? Who's been a heroic force for you in your life?
Oh wow. I mean, they're all over the board. My mom to start with, from she's a terrific person, and she really kind of brought that aloha spirit into the way that I do things. She's from Hawaii, and so I was raised in an environment that was created with a lot of aloha, a lot of mana, as I write about in the book. And that really has helped me kind of stay in touch with the human side of organizational development and all the work that I do, and kind of making sure that you don't leave people out of the organization. And so there's mom. But I mean, there's great leaders. Once I started getting into organizational leadership, there are some great leaders in our time, like Patton and Eisenhower, and I mean the list could go on all the way back to Lincoln, or even Napoleonic era. I find it interesting to look at the way different leaders kind of led, even up to more recently Obama, and even what Trump's doing today. And not I know I'm not answering your question from an inspirational standpoint, but for me, it's more like picking apart the leadership, right? And thinking about, all right, well, what's happening and how are their followers reacting to what they're doing? Because for me, good leadership is about good followership. If you can get people to follow what you're doing, then you're a good leader. So you see what happened with Starmer, right? I mean, I kind of
Yeah.
kind of got a bad run, right? And actually, England over there is having a bad run of PMs, just because, and it goes back to that principle of followership, right? They can't, they can't find a leader that they really want to follow.
So let me ask you this, and you just mentioned some central figures, and we've talked about Silicon Valley and organizational development. If you could meet one CEO today, one business leader, business mind that does it right, you know, customer retention, good employee satisfaction, just a
Yeah.
good run machine, who would
Mhm.
you love to meet, have lunch with that might help you in the work that you're doing?
Well, I mean, um, if I could have met with Steve Jobs, I think that that would have been amazing.
Yeah,
That's an obvious go-to, but there's there's reasons for that. When we talk about inspiration, Steve Jobs was an inspirational leader. He wasn't the easiest person to get along with,
right.
but from a leadership standpoint, I think that he connected all the things right, and he had sort of this magic of being able to imagine something that nobody else imagined. And that's going to be the heart of innovation. I think it's the engine that kept Apple running. I was a little bit worried when he died. I think, I think that the organizations, when Tim took over, I mean, they're not doing too bad. But I still don't think that they're on the stride that they were when Jobs was running it. And
Yeah.
so, out of all of the figures in the past, I really would have liked to connect up with Jobs.
So let me ask you this. What is the energy every day for you to keep up with this changing, evolving world that we live in? With Silicon Valley, AI, businesses are changing pretty rapidly, but you're hitting at a human emotional level to fix
Yeah.
things. You have a soul. What is that energy every day for you to do it at a high level?
It takes a lot of energy to be honest with you. But it's okay, because I kind of feed off of that. I think it's kind of what gets me up and out in the morning and kind of doing what I do. But I have to tell you, it is kind of frustrating at times. We're still in my opinion, I'm running up against too many organizations that are just not treating people the way that they really should be treating people. And I think that what happens is when you get to higher levels of the organization, you kind of lose sense of the fact that your organization is fundamentally made up of people. So, for instance, if you've got organizations trying to run large transformations, and I understand it, right? They're under pressures, and they've got very very daunting challenges to deal with, but you can't start, looking at your people as just another device, in your machine, right? These are still people, um, and they're people that need to connect, that you need to make sure that you have a connection with, especially if especially if you really want to retain those people for the next stage of your journey. And so I'd say that I'd say that it takes a lot of energy to do what I do, but what's most enervating is sort of, the arguments that I have to have with leaders about, what's going on with their people and just trying to get on the same page with their people. It's too bad too, because I think that you don't have, like what I write about in the book is that you don't have to be at odds with your people. I mean, it's not an either or. You can have, a thriving business and, a successful work environment, and we proved that here in Silicon Valley, many times over. And that's the experience that I draw from. But it always seems like, they just don't draw that connection properly.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into that young 18-year-old version of you, ready to change the world. You walk in, and there's a film projector, and you click play, and there's a 60-second highlight reel of the life you've lived. Would that young version of you believe your life turned out this way?
Not at all. At 18 years old? No, 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 no way. But I think that's part of the magic of life, right? And philosophically, I think it's important. If I reflect on my life from 18 till now, and I still have a few more years to go, but hopefully, knock on wood.
Yeah.
But I think it's important. There's a quote that I have in the book that goes something like, you never really plan in order to achieve the objective of your plan. You always plan in order to figure out like what to do next. Um, I think I feel bad for people that overplan. Is kind of what I'm getting at. I feel bad for people that um at 18 years old, I'm going to structure my life and this is my plan all the way up until I'm 75 and I'm going to execute that plan no matter what. Because I think if you live your life that way, you're going to miss out on a whole lot of opportunity that life is going to throw at you that you just don't have the privilege of knowing right now. And so there's a delicate balance between intention and being opportunistic and looking for the opportunities around you and then pivoting and adjusting in a way that isn't going to really, mess you up.
Yeah. So in that 60-second highlight reel, what are you the proudest of? What are you the happiest about?
I'm happiest of those pivots that I made because, I very well could have stayed down the path of I'm going to be a computer programmer. I'm going to be a computer programmer no matter what, right? And I don't know. I don't know how that life would have turned out. Maybe I'd be, you know, sitting. Maybe I would have hit the Google stream and I would have been, sitting on my own mansion in the Bahamas at this point. I don't know. I don't know how that would have turned out. But I'm proud of my ability to kind of, look at a situation and pivot if I need to. If there's an opportunity there, even if that opportunity didn't work out, at least I recognize it. I went for it. I made a change. And there's been some hard changes that I've made in my life, especially moving away from computer science because I really was a geek. I really was a computer techie geek. And I didn't necessarily want to leave that world. It's just I was looking around at my life and I was looking around at what was going on, and I realized that I needed to make a change. And it was a brave change, but I did it anyway. I and remember, I'm doing this all under sort of the environment of being a consultant, because I don't know much other life than professional life than being a consultant. Consulting found me very, very early. I went into the service when I was a kid, and as soon as I got out of the service, I did a short stint at Lockheed. But as soon as I left Lockheed, that was only a few years, consulting found me, and I've been consulting ever since. And so talking about your highlight reel and what I'm proud of is just being able to survive as a consultant and all those, there's a few pivotal moments where, you know, uh, a bad decision could have gone really bad for me, but, I took a chance and it worked out.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that gets your book, everyone that knows you in different ways, that you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Yeah, I think I'm a constant learner. And you're right. I think that I try to observe as much as I can, and I try to think about how other people think about me. And I think that just because of what I do, people often have the wrong impression that, oh, I'm a management consultant, and so, I'm going to come in and I'm going to run things my way. That's not true. I come in and I try to work with people on what the right way is to do it. But I do have opinions because I've been on this world for a while and I've seen a whole lot of things at a lot of different companies. And so if you're going to come at me with an argument, you better come with some pretty tenable points, right? So yeah, and I think what that's done is even if you read the book, I mean, it's very opinionated. I'll just tell you that right now. It's very, very opinionated, you know. But I mean, when you peel all that back, where do those opinions come from? They come from learning. And so I view myself as a lifelong learner. Regardless of how the people perceive me, I'm always looking to learn about what I don't know. Because, there's a whole lot that I don't know. Even though I've learned a lot over the years that I've been on this earth, there's still a whole lot I don't know. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. I have this intellectual curiosity about me. And it's just not about my field. It's about everything.
Yeah.
Just like the simplest things will say, I wonder why that's the case, right? I wonder
Uh,
why that's the case.
yep. It's good to have that cat-like quality. So if anybody wants to get your book, grow your business up, they want to reach out, hire you,
Yeah.
questions, any of the good business, where do they go?
Yeah, you can easily Google me. So, if because I'm pretty easy to find on the internet. My website is johnweathington.com is where you'll find a lot of, that's where my blog's at, and I do some writing on there. I also have a corporate website at xmsystems.com. You can find the book out on Amazon. It's called Grow Your Business Up. And Like I said, I mean, if you Google me and you spell my name correctly, because there's not too many Weathingtons out
Yeah,
there. We're out there, but not too many.
yeah.
You'll definitely find me.
And I will make it easy. I will put it in the show notes. John, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time, your story. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe. I really appreciate you having me on.
You bet.